Welcome to the Truly Missed Podcast. I'm Candace, and each week I'll tell you about an underreported missing person of color. According to the latest figures from the FBI's National Crime Information Center database, over 500,000 people were reported missing in 2021. Of those missing, more than 350 were children. From those cases, more than 70,000 were Black girls. All people of color must be vigilant in helping report crimes and evidence to help bring back loved ones when possible and gain closure when it isn't. Today we will discuss the disappearance of Tionda and Diamond Bradley. Tionda and Diamond were two of four sisters raised on the south side of Chicago, Illinois. Tionda was born on January 20th, 1991, and Diamond was born on November 25th, 1997. On July 6, 2001, Tionda, age 10, and Diamond, age 3, were home alone while their mother was at work. The two other sisters, Victoria, age 9, and Rita, age 12, were still at their grandmother's apartment from the night before. There were several family members living in the Lake Grove apartment complex at the time of the disappearance who took turns watching after the children. It is unknown why Tracy decided to leave just two of her daughters alone when there was family available to watch them. Tionda loved dancing. She was a very happy child, described as talented, funny, and smart. Diamond was described as very shy and sweet. She looked up to her big sister and always wanted to be with her. Both children were known to be reserved and timid around strangers. Tracy Bradley, the girl's mother, went to work at 6 a.m. She left her home with Diamond's father, George, who came sometime between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. that morning. It is confirmed that Tracy was at work that day. The girls do not have the same father. An unnamed man of foreign descent was paying child support for Tionda, but stopped paying in early 2001 when it was proven that he wasn't her father. George and Tracy were also in a custody dispute for Diamond, but believed to still be having a sexual relationship. Tracy allegedly called to check on the girl sometime between 7 and 8 a.m., but her calls went unanswered. At some point later, Tionda called and left her mother a voicemail. Tracy continued on with her workday without returning her daughter's call. Tionda was said to have been expected at a summer program but did not attend. There were no child care plans made for little Diamond ever mentioned to authorities if Tionda were to have attended the program, but it is likely that she would either have attended the program with her sister or be taken to be with her other sisters. Tracy returned home around 12:30 p.m. with George to find a note from Tionda stating that she and Diamond went to the store and then to a nearby playground. Unfortunately, the girls were never seen again. Immediately, the note seemed suspicious and Tracy became alarmed. Their great aunt Sheila stated that she doesn't believe that Tionda wrote the note. She felt the style and overall tone of the note did not sound like Tionda. She was actually surprised that there was a note left at all. The family said that the sisters knew not to answer the door for strangers, so whoever took them was someone that they had to been familiar with. It is later confirmed that Tionda did write the note, but it is unclear if she was coached to do so or not. Ed Miller of America's Most Wanted stated in a Nancy Grace interview he confirmed with the FBI that the handwriting samples taken from her school matched the note. The police were not called until 6 hours later, around 6:30 p.m. In the time between her arriving home and calling the police, she allegedly searched all over the apartment, then the complex, and ultimately the neighborhood. Tracy eventually tells the police that she waited so long to call them because she was afraid that her other children would be taken by Child Protective Services, so she had left two of them at home unattended. Once search efforts began, this easily became one of the biggest searches in Chicago history. The search radius expands about 30 miles in all directions from the Lake Grove apartments. Over 30 relatives were interviewed, and the most alarming interview were with Tracy, unfortunately. Please note that Tracy's story changes a few times. I'll start with her original account of the morning. She initially told the police that she was home asleep and awoke to find the girls missing. She later admits that she was not home, but she was at work. She also reveals that George was at the house earlier that morning before work. He also dropped her off. She mentions to the police that she had a camping trip 106 miles away, planned for only Tionda and Diamond, even though her other daughter Victoria's birthday was the following day. No evidence of the camping supplies have ever been found. The family had never been camping before. George left before the police arrived, even though his child was missing as well. He did not participate in any search at any time for any of the children. Tracy was questioned extensively for days about her children's disappearance. She assaulted an officer during one questioning. She was not charged with a crime at this incident. She was given a polygraph test and passed. eventually hired a defense lawyer to represent her and stopped cooperating with any searches or efforts of the police. George was questioned and his car was searched, which turned up several hairs in his trunk. The hairs could belong to Tracy, Tionda, or Diamond and could have been left at some time before the incident. However, he also had a Home Depot receipt timestamped for the time that Tracy was at work. The receipt was for bleach, gloves, and garbage bag. He was never officially named a suspect. The girl's family discovered a voicemail on Tracy's phone from Tionda asking if she could open the door for George. George was going to take them to the store to pick up a cake and then pick up her mom from work. This could be George, Diamond's father George, or George, the sometimes babysitter of the girls who also lived in the complex. Diamond's father George did in fact pick Tracy up from work and brought her home and then left. The police were made aware of this voicemail, but before it could be obtained, the voicemail was reportedly lost. Police obtained surveillance footage from the store Tionda mentioned and asked Tracy to view it. Two young girls were spotted on the footage and needed to be identified. Tracy initially refused to watch the footage. By the time she had a change of heart, the footage was in possession of the FBI. She arranged a meeting to view it and said it was not the girls. In 2007, Sheila, the aunt, received an email from someone claiming to be Tionda. This led to a MySpace page of a teen girl who looked a lot like Tionda. A forensic artist from Houston compared photos of Tionda to the photos of the girl from the MySpace page. She agreed with the police and the family that it was Tionda, but no searches turned up to where she might be. 1 year later, in 2008, the girl from the MySpace page's father came forward explaining that it was his daughter and not Tionda. It is unclear why the girl pretended to be Tionda. In 2013, Sheila received an alarming email where a woman claimed her boyfriend had details of the girl's disappearance. Police have not released much information about this woman or the details of the email and have said it is just part of an ongoing investigation. Tracy and George eventually move away and have another child together. George has still never participated in any search for his daughter. His alibi for the morning of the girl's disappearance is not public, but it must have been good enough to not be considered a suspect. Even though there's that receipt, Tracy no longer speaks publicly of her two daughters that have now been missing for 21 years. Her silence has literally left a total of 12 hours from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. of unaccounted for time of what might have happened. The fact that George didn't even look for his own child is also very unsettling. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and if she went missing, I would immediately call the police. I would be in every phase, on every news channel, doing every interview I could. I can't relate to parents not seeming interested in finding missing children. I'll leave my opinion of them at that. The last time anyone truly saw the girls was the previous morning of their reported disappearance, and that was by their grandmother. So it is possible that they have been missing much longer than the initial window of 6:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. There are 3 popular scenarios explored as to what may have happened. The first, a stranger abducted them. I don't think that this is the case. These sisters were said to be wary of strangers, so unless they were snatched off the street near the store they supposedly went to, where would this have happened? There was surveillance video near the store, and I believe Tionda would have fought hard as she could to protect her sister. Something else should have been seen on camera if they were abducted anywhere near the store. Even though there are many cases where strangers are able to lure children away, Tionda and Diamond had a lot of family in the area. If anyone were going to try to relay a message or attempt to take them anywhere, then they would know to go with only family. I feel like Tionda would have known not to go with a stranger, especially since she wasn't even supposed to leave the house. If it was a stranger, it was somebody watching her for a while to learn the habits of Tracy and her daughters. This person would know what to say to gain the trust of Tionda. Once Tionda was subdued, then little Diamond had no chance against her abductors, and she would have likely stayed near her sister anyway. She was only 3. To me, this is the most unlikely. There have been speculation that they may have been sold into trafficking, but no solid evidence supports this. It's a possible theory, but a weak one. The second scenario is that they knew they attacked her. I side more with this theory. There was no sign of forced entry. There were no signs of Tionda attempting to run away on her own with her little sister. The note was likely coached. Tionda said George was at the door. She knew 2 people named George, and it could have been either of them. It also could have been someone else, one pretending to be a George, since they knew that a George often visited the home. That way, they wouldn't even have to break in. This would mean it was a neighbor. But how and when could they keep and move the girls without being seen? And the apartment wasn't in any disarray. There was no struggle. I don't know if you have ever tried to wrangle a child, even in a nice way, but it's almost impossible. Aggressively trying to kidnap children seems like more than a day's work. This scenario to me would require 2 people, twice likely to be noticed. Neighbors would say that they saw the girls playing at the playground around noon, but sightings are unconfirmed. If that's the case, then the girl went missing at the park a mere 30 minutes before Tracy got home. If it is the way it happened, how had no one seen or heard anything? The third scenario is that it's possible that George and Tracy knew more about the children's whereabouts. George's alibi is not made public. He's found with that receipt for cleaning supplies, and hairs were found in his trunk. He also didn't help look for the children or cooperate with the police. He was one of 2 people who was suspected to have last seen the girls alive in the apartment. While all this evidence is circumstantial, why is there so much of it? One weird thing out of place, I can understand, but there are so many things that point to George being responsible or knowing what may have happened. He knew Tracy's work schedule. He was her ride, so he knew exactly what time she would be out of the house. Tionda's voicemail mentioning of George being at the door. His unaccounted for time while Tracy was at work. And I stress, his refusal to look for his own daughter, even if not for Tionda. Tracy was at work, so if her timeline has any truth to it at all and she really was there, she could not have done anything with the girls physically, but she might be protecting George. She became hostile with the police during an interview, refused to continue the search, and lied several times. She also didn't find it odd that he didn't participate in any of the searches or even stick around to talk to the police. And then there's that random camping trip she mentioned. The family had never been camping. And while a lot of families do try new things randomly, this just doesn't seem like the family that would try that. Tracy and George were only going to take 2 of the daughters. Why not all 4? To me, this scenario of George and Tracy knowing more about their whereabouts seems to be the most logical with the information we were given, even though it's not a strong, solid, and concrete case. There's a lot of unaccounted for time in the last 24 hours before the girls went missing. George would have been a person of interest if this was my case, but this isn't my case. Sheila continues her efforts to locate her nieces, who are far from little girls now. Tionda would be 31 and Diamond would be 25. Their search is now for either 2 grown women or missing remains. International searches were conducted because of new leads, but they all turned up dead ends. It is likely that this will remain a mystery unless someone decides to come forward. The family has stated that they believe that Tracy knows more than what she shared with them or with the police. No one has ever been formally charged as a suspect or a person of interest in this case, and the police have not released any updated information as of 2022. Age-progressing photos have been released of what the girls may look like today. At the time, Tionda had a quarter-size burn scar on her left forearm. She was 4'2", 70 pounds, with brunette hair and brown eyes at the time of her disappearance. Diamond had a scar on the left side of her forehead. Diamond was 3 feet, 40 pounds, with black hair and dark brown deep-set eyes. Sheila holds a yearly vigil to honor her niece's memories by releasing balloons and saying prayers that they are either returned home or at peace wherever they may be. Rita and Victoria, the other 2 sisters, have spoken about how hard life has been not knowing where their sisters are. One of the sisters thought that she may be next growing up once her sisters went missing. Rita and Victoria are grown now with families of their own, and they say that the disappearances have made them keep a very close protective eye over their own children. A $10,000 cash reward is being offered for any information leading to the disappearance of Tionda and Diamond. If you have any information, you can contact Investigator Foster at 847-579-9771, and this is the Bradley Sisters Confidential Hotline. You can also contact the Chicago PD at 312-747-5789. You can contact the FBI Chicago branch at 312-421-6700 or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST. That's 1-800-THE-LOST. There's another podcast that went into great detail about this case called Trace Evidence. It's linked in the show notes. The host, Stephen Pacheco, did an amazing job covering this case. A lot of the articles have been very brief with very little information, but he took a deep dive. Case File Chicago also had a great video linked in the show notes. Thank you for listening. We will be back next week with another episode of Truly Missed. You can follow us on Instagram at trulymissedpodcast, or you can send us an email at trulymissedpodcast@gmail.com. If you have a story that you would like to share, if you have any updates on the stories that I've already shared, if you have any tips that you would like me to share on your behalf, please feel free to DM or email me. I focus on people of color as these stories don't get as much coverage. Hopefully we can build this community one listener at a time. All resources are listed in the show notes. Please help this family and other families get one step closer to bringing their loved one home. Tionda and Diamond are truly missed.